Alright, Super Thracia chapter 12X. This chapter has quite a lot to talk about in terms of just new things and changes from vanilla. I'll talk about changes from vanilla first. Once I split up the map. Alright, the map is slightly changed in general, but that's nothing too major. Pawn is still the boss, but he is no longer recruitable and has a Shadow Sword, which makes him a real pain to take down on account of it having the Lopter effect. Your best bet's probably going to be to just try and rig as many crits as you can with avail in save states, because he's just a real pain. In this chapter, normally you could recruit Trude and Tina. However, Tina is dead and Trude is just not present. Instead of Trude, we have Boyce, who uses a portrait that sure as hell looks like Garrick, but it isn't. Statistically, he's alright. He comes with the Kingmaker, which is no longer brave, but instead is 1-2 range, and the Ode Scroll, which is another scroll. Nothing much there. You recruit him with Sita. And replacing Tina is Patty, one of Bridget's kids from FE4. Most notably about her for now is her starting inventory. A Silver Sword is nothing to talk about, but the Nagling is pretty interesting. It's a 1-2 range Brave Axe that is locked to North Thracian royalty and is effective against dragon riding classes. Of course, this means that once Leif becomes a Master Knight lane to the game, he can use it. However, there is a second character who can use it, who, even in vanilla, has access to some personal weapons you wouldn't think they would. She also comes with the Oler scroll, which is, I mean, it's whatever, it's a scroll. She's also worth recruiting because she recruits another character down the line. Another change from vanilla is that, kind of to compensate for the fact that Pawn is no longer recruitable, you can still turn Alara into a dancer in this chapter, which I hadn't known the first time I recorded this chapter. Instead, you have her talk to this generic dancer off in this corner, and it turns her into a dancer. This is pretty obscure, given that it is a generic, but at the same time, it does kind of make sense, given that it is another dancer. So, But yeah, no, that's... A dancer is always nice to have, so it's good information to have if you ever decide to play this hack. I mean, I wouldn't recommend it, but you certainly could. Now then, as for new things from the vanilla version of this chapter, we're introduced to 2 new enemy types in this chapter. This is the first of which is a Novistador. Novistadors are invisible enemies who can pass through walls. They have no map sprites, and they only have a shadow when you have them selected or when they're moving an enemy phase. They're a pain. They're one of the worst parts about this hack. There's a few methods you can use to try and take note of them. One is you can just like go over every single tile and see if there's an Novistador on it. That's tedious and boring. Another one is that in a non-Fog of War chapter, you can cycle through enemies by looking at their menu. And then there's another trick that I'll talk about in chapter 17a. But generally speaking, they're annoying. But we won't be seeing them for a while again after this. This is just kind of an introduction to them, and they're pretty prevalent in the late game. They suck. Anyway, as I kind of unintentionally highlighted a second ago, there's a Sarah morph in this chapter. Sarah is still recruitable in this hack, but not until a fair bit later. Well, a fair bit later. Same recruitment time as she has in vanilla. These things are going to show up in quite a few chapters, and their main thing is just that you can't kill them, and they always have some kind of staff meant to just kind of mess with you. Not much to talk about with them. Now then, there's a second new enemy type introduced in this chapter, which doesn't show up until later reinforcements, so I'll just use a save state. Reinforcements for this chapter, there's Novistadors coming from the throne, and then the Ganados, which are the kids, coming from stairways around the map. But there's actually, starting with turn 25, a new type of enemy starts to appear. This is a Verdugo. It is effectively Arden, except more dangerous. Instead of being a sword knight, they can use any weapon type, and they also have bravery as a personal skill, which, you know, it's like Marty. But they function the same as he did. If you don't kill them in one round of combat, they gain capped stats and, like, 30 movement. That's really all there is to talk about for this chapter. 2 new characters. Alara can still become a dancer despite my initial beliefs. Pan's a pain to recruit, and there's a couple of annoying new enemy types. But the chapter itself, if you're just playing the chapter, Pan's the most annoying part just because of how difficult he is to take down. But if you're playing this hack, you're probably going to be abusing save states anyway, so why not rig your crit? And that's about it for this chapter.